Jacques, first of all, thanks for spending a little time with Aero-News. We've been here all week for the 2010 Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta. We've spent the week out here talking to folks, and your name comes up quite a bit because what you've done for the museum is so appreciated out there. But how do you collect what is apparently a fair amount of this museum? Where did this come from? What's the passion behind it? Why?
Well, I think the passion behind it is definitely a love of lighter than air and ballooning. Starting in 1979 here in Albuquerque, as myself and Kirk Thomas did, seeing the frivolity, actually, of the sport and actually the seriousness that some of us took ourselves as we decided to build the first special shape in New Mexico, Chic-I-Boom balloon that is, the head of Carmen, Miranda, to bring...
Just flew by, didn't it?
Just flew by. That's the second envelope. She had a facelift. The old one was a bit like Joan Rivers, had to be put away and lifted up again. And I think what is a hobby for us became, for me, then a passion and then an obsession, and the collection started about that same time. And the museum here was having a struggle getting off the ground, so we just continued to collect and amass the world's largest collection that went into a museum in South Dakota while this facility was waiting to be built, if it ever was going to be built. And then the impetus came along with some good politicians and some stroke of luck, and this fantastic, specially designed facility got off the ground, and the collection then was transferred from South Dakota here in 10 semi-loads. I think the auctions were a great challenge, and luckily Sir Richard Branson and the late Malcolm Forbes seemed not to want to collect because they could have out-collected us with a stroke of a pen and a check. And then because of our flying all over the world with the shapes and the record setting and the gas ballooning, people then approached us and said, we have this and we have that, are you interested? And then we donated the collection to the country, and it made it easier for people to give their prized possessions to be part of a public venue for people to see and to share the joy of aviation.
Now, another moment of freedom from Cirrus Aircraft. Freedom through safety. Perhaps the ultimate freedom is confidence, assurance, and peace of mind. We design it into every personal aircraft we build. It's the security that comes with knowing you're flying the plane with a parachute. The breakthrough concept that launched the Cirrus phenomenon.
It's a unique type of person who can, one, collect all these things and value them, and then finally give them away. How do you do that? How do you let go?
Well, you have to be very colorful, like your balloons that you see out here. And I think you have to be rather eccentric as well. And then you have to be blessed with some financial resources. Some of the most exciting things are perhaps the most mundane and colorful things, but actual depictions of events that were happening, whether it be on fans or whether it be enamel paintings. And you are so automatically, I think, attracted to it, and you get so excited and you get carried away, especially if you have a glass of champagne, as the first balloonist did, and it seems like your imagination goes wild, as sometimes your checkbook follows suit. And then to really want to have, I think, the nature to want to share this enthusiasm with the general public and not just hoard it for yourself in your own private little library or your private home or your private museum. It does take a unique, colorful, and eccentric person to do that.
And the obligatory champagne.
And the obligatory champagne.
Out of this collection you amassed, what are your favorites? Or more important, which of your favorites have the best stories to go with them?
I think there are probably three favorites, one of which I still retain privately and which will come to this museum upon my death. It's the Hindenburg Cup given to the captain of the Hindenburg on the maiden flight of the Hindenburg from Friedrichshafen to Lakehurst. Now, little did I know in England at an auto auction, thinking I was the only one that knew about this, there was a phone bidder, and it happened to be, if I'd had known at the time, I would have let him have it. It was Tom Crouch of the Smithsonian. Nevertheless, I was a successful bidder, and it sits in my library at this particular time, on loan occasion to the museum. The second favorite would have to be the letter written by Count von Zeppelin. Now, this is all relating to airships, and I'm not even an airship pilot, on the morning after his first flight. And this is here in the museum, handwritten by Count von Zeppelin, and Marilee will happily show you that. And I think the third favorite ballooning artifact would have to be the fan, actually. It's a fan that a lady would have had with the actual drawing of the Montgolfier at the time in front of Napoleon, because it's an artifact not relating to all of these wonderful aircraft, actually, but a piece of memorabilia. So those are all kind of artifacts not related to everything you see behind you, because they speak for themselves.
Who better than to look at the future of ballooning than somebody who has been collecting and categorizing the past? What are your thoughts?
Well, I do believe that there are frontiers yet to be achieved. I think the Roziere balloon, which we brought into this country in the early 80s, the combination helium hot air balloon, of course the Breitling team had it in their successful round the world team. A small competition using a 77,000 cubic foot Roziere balloon with appropriate sponsorship, get something similar to the Gordon Bennett, but combine both a sort of competition for accuracy as well as long distance. Long distance is very challenging in its own right, very exciting. But the Roziere balloon can continue to develop, and that sort of competition can be exciting from a spectator point of view. In terms of industry and technology, I think Mary Lee touched on things that can be used for airships in the forest, the rainforest, to help some of our global warming. And I think the most important thing for me is advancing human nature's joy. That's the most important technological advance, in my opinion.
If you own a Cirrus today, or if you are considering the purchase of a new or used aircraft, consider this. Avidyne, in conjunction with the country's leading Cirrus sales and maintenance facilities, has launched the G3R9 program that combines the purchase of a late-model, low-time Cirrus aircraft and the addition of the Avidyne Integra Release 9 avionics suite for much less than you may have thought, and certainly much less than purchasing a brand new aircraft. G3R9, combining the best airframe, best engine, and best avionics for the best value.
What would you like to see this museum become?
I'd love to see this museum become more of a destination for everyone. Certainly the aviation enthusiast, someone like yourself, people that go way back. Joe Kittinger will be here tomorrow. I mean, it is such a destination in itself, not far off the beaten path, but someplace to come and spend an entire day. You don't have to be a researcher, you don't have to be a pilot, you don't have to know anything about aviation to really enjoy and learn about aviation in its very early stages all the way up to contemporary ballooning. I'd like to see it become perhaps a place for space flight ticket sales. I think it's an ideal location for that. I think Albuquerque is a great center, and the museum itself, as the mecca of hot air and gas ballooning, it is a destination that one really needs to make an effort to come and see once in their lifetime.
Well, this state has made a serious effort at the private space initiatives and definitely wants to be involved in that. And as much as it's been so closely associated with the history that literally started aviation, it certainly wants to be part of its future.
It definitely does, and it has great support from Governor Richardson, and I know the present mayor of Albuquerque, Barry, supports it as well as his staff. And that's so important because it is part of our history and it's part of our future, not only just in aerospace research and technology that you're involved in. It's so important for our young people to learn about that, in my opinion. And one other thing about why this museum is so important, it's a collection site for everything related to lighter than air, where people can take stuff out of their garage that they've held on to for years that means a lot to them and share it with the general public to help educate the younger generation.
For those of us in the aviation community who may be aware of a piece of technology or memorabilia or something that may be part of the history of ballooning, how do we contact you or the museum in order to, one, have this evaluated to make sure it fits and see this be appreciated in the future by the public that comes here?
Oh, Jim, that's a very good question. I would say contact directly the curator, who has a vast knowledge of the history. Mary Lee, the finest in the world, no doubt. This is the world's largest and finest collection. She's the world's finest curator, in my opinion. To contact her directly and the foundation director, the Maxie L. Anderson Benabruzzo Foundation Director, Jennifer Taylor, at the foundation, because there are some people who may not choose to give to a city but will give to a foundation. We are interlinked, and it's very important. No matter how insignificant you might think it is, it could be quite significant.
Sir, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jim.